Good morning and welcome to Coffee with Mr. V. I've got my Ridley mug there, good old Kermit. And today we're going to be doing positive externalities. I didn't quite get onto it yesterday when we did negative externalities. So today's positive externalities. And again, we'll look at it mainly through the prism of market failure, but then we can see if we can make some links to macro as well. Anyway, you know the score by now. If you want to participate with Coffee with Mr. V, go get yourself a coffee or whatever your favorite liquid is, put it in a mug, a glass or a cup, come back to me. And then on the count of three, we're going to do the synchronized sip. And that is going to be the best part of your day. So here we go. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, I love coffee. So here we go. Positive externalities then. Positive externality is when there is a positive spillover on the third party. Now, more often than not, the case study you're going to come up against is the positive externality in consumption. It's when I consume a product as a consumer that there is a negative spillover on the third party. Remember, I told you to think about that party as some random dude just walking down the high street that you don't know at all. It's neither the consumer nor the producer of the product, just some random person, Joe Public. Okay, but you consume the product, perhaps me drinking a cup of coffee like this, and somehow there is a positive externality on that random dude. Now, coffee's not a great example. Okay, there's no reason why Joe Public should benefit at all from me drinking a cup of coffee. The two classic examples of this are healthcare and education. And healthcare is clearly a very topical one at the moment because you can see that clearly one person's consumption of medical treatment for coronavirus or something else will have a major impact on the third party, because if they're getting treated for coronavirus, that means they are less likely to be spreading it to someone else. And obviously there's a benefit to that, which is the opportunity cost of getting it and all the costs associated with that. Education is quite often seen as a merit good as well, because when you are consuming this video, for example, not only are you likely to get more skilled up and therefore end up at university with a much better degree and a much better higher paid job, but also in the future, you are the one that's going to pay more taxes because of your high paid job. And also you may be the one that comes up with the new third way of economic strategy. Yeah, not classical, not Keynesian, but something else. Okay, maybe you'll go and work for the central bank and come up with a new type of quantitative easing or something. So those are the two classic examples of merit goods. If you're doing Edexcel A-level economics, then you will only ever do positive externalities in consumption. If you do the IB or you do different exam boards, then you might do positive externalities in production. So here we're going to do merit goods or positive externalities in consumption. For that, we're going to need a supply and demand diagram, as always. Here's our marginal private benefits and our marginal private costs, and wherever they intersect, remember, is the free market allocation of resources. That's how much would be consumed when consumers only think about themselves and producers only think about themselves. The private benefits intersection with the private costs. But what we're saying is then that there is an external cost on Joe Public of consuming this product, an external benefit, sorry. So it's not just my private benefit or your private benefit that you should be bothered about. You should be looking at, or economics should be looking about, at the benefits on the external third party as well. So for whatever good it is that I'm consuming, let's say it's this good over here. You know, this is episode 21, after all, of Coffee with Mr. V. So by the time we're on episode 21, you're getting that much benefit, but you're also giving that much benefit to the third party as well. So you're getting that much benefit, the third party is also getting that benefit. But even all the way back in episode 1, okay, you were also giving the third party that amount of benefit. Remember, that benefit, it's difficult sometimes to think about it in real cost terms or price terms, even value terms. But you've got to think about it in those ways. The economic benefit is not just to yourself, but there is an economic benefit to the third party. If, for example, maybe you're not studying economics, maybe you're studying chemistry to go and be a medic, the idea that you may then be the person who saves more lives, or you may be the person that comes up with a cure for cancer or whatever it might be. There is an external benefit, whether it's short run, long run, there is a benefit to the consumption of these goods. So it doesn't matter however many units you're consuming, whichever unit you're consuming, you're also going to be giving this external benefit to the third party. You can do this for any unit, and then you can draw across all of those lines. That's meant to be parallel. okay, and we get a new line which we will call the marginal social benefits. The analysis looks very similar to what we did yesterday with negative externalities. The marginal social benefits is simply the marginal private benefit, the benefit that I get as the consumer consuming this product, plus the external benefit, the benefit that Joe Public gets as well. So let's look at that. That's the benefit that I got. That's the benefit that Joe Public got. And then all of that added together is the social benefit, because society, after all, is made up of not just first and second party, but third party as well. So first, second, third party equals society, all parties. Fine. It's very, very unlikely that you will ever get a good that is behaving with a positive externality and a negative externality. So for that reason, there is no need to shift the supply curve, okay? You would go through the same logic and you would say that the marginal the marginal social costs equal the marginal private costs plus the external cost. But since there is no external cost here equals 0, this is simply the same line, okay? So what does economics analysis say? Economic analysis says that where the two socials meet, that is where your socially optimum level should be, QSOL. Because, and again, we've done this analysis a few times now, the social benefits up to QSOL, this line here, the social benefits is greater than the social cost line. If we were to stop here at the free market, we wouldn't get all of that community surplus. We'd have actually lost out on that triangle there. That's the welfare loss triangle from a merit good or a good that has positive externalities in consumption. For those of you doing the IB or different exam boards, you can do this with positive externalities in production. Although I always feel that, you know, these are few and far between in terms of their actual real life examples. But what you would do is you would just apply the external benefits to the product curve. So you decrease the private costs, and that's why I'm shifting it that way. The social benefits here then would be the same, and that would be your socially optimum level, and that would be QFM, and that would be your welfare loss triangle. So if you look, you still end up with the same analysis. QSOL is to the right of the free market level, okay? You still have a negative welfare loss triangle, pointing to the right, pointing towards QSOL. Now I'm going to get rid of that because it will get confusing and you'll end up looking at that rather than looking at this diagram. But this is the diagram that, you know, you'll only ever draw if you're doing Edexcel. It's the diagram that you're probably going to draw 99% of the times in IB or other exam boards anyway. But let me just restate that. It is a market failure. It's a market failure because we are under-allocating, we're under-consuming, we're under-producing. It's an inefficient allocation of resources because we have not maximized community surplus or social surplus, whatever you want to say. So possible solutions then. Possible solutions would be subsidies. You could also talk about info campaigns, or you could also talk about public provision, state provision, providing it for free. Okay, we'll take them one at a time. And if you remember what I said, I always like to draw these one on top of the other. So the market failure one goes on top, and then you can draw this one underneath. This will be my subsidies diagram. And the reason for doing this is because you can marry up the quantities and you can kind of make the point that you're exactly fixing the market failure or not. So that's where we're trying to get back to. We're trying to increase the consumption of this good. Okay, so one way to do it is a subsidy. So a subsidy, remember, go back and have a look at a previous episode if you've forgotten how to do that. You apply the subsidy, it shifts the supply curve to the right, and I've shifted it exactly so that the new intersection is with the demand curve here, which is at QSOL. So we have fixed the market failure, absolutely. Okay, we wanted to get to QSOL, and as a result of shifting the supply curve to the right, I have got consumption to QSOL, market success. Evaluation points then. So this is an expensive policy. Remember, you can find the amount that the government has spent Again, if you can't remember how to do that, go and look at a previous episode. So it's expensive, number one. It might accumulate a lot of debt for the government, and there's lots of disadvantages of having a large national debt. You may not have actually increased the subsidy by enough, or you may in fact increase the subsidy too much. So for example, if I'd increased the subsidy to there, I would have actually produced too much. I would have gone too far over the socially optimum level. I would have wasted resources. If I'd only given that amount of subsidy, I haven't got back to the socially optimum level far enough. So we still got an underallocation of resources. There's also no reason why the firm would necessarily have to pass on the subsidy as lower costs, all right? Unless, of course, it came with a government, some sort of extra government policy that said we are expecting prices to fall by X. Information campaigns, very similar to the one we were doing yesterday, except that it's just working in reverse. This time we're not trying to tell people or give people full information so that they reduce consumption. We're trying to promote the consumption of this product so that they increase their consumption. So what we're hoping to do is by running lots of information campaigns and saying get vaccinated or go to school more, we're hoping that the demand curve shifts to the right. And then this will be interesting. Have I done it exactly? I have. So we are now back at the socially optimum level because we have changed people's fundamental, just trying to get the word fundamental in there. We have changed people's fundamental demand preferences about this particular good. We have shifted the demand curve. We have made it more fashionable. We've made it more trendy. Or maybe we've just given people full information so that they understand now that by consuming this good, they are not just benefiting themselves, private benefits, they are also benefiting the third-party external benefits. Problems with this, again, people are naturally self-interested according to economics, so they still might just ignore the information campaign. Maybe the information campaign doesn't shift demand as far enough. It may be expensive, it may not reach everybody, people may ignore it. Finally then, public provision. Just before we do that, quick aside, a common mistake here is to talk about maximum prices. Maximum prices won't fix this market failure, okay? If you think about a maximum price, people often think maximum prices because I guess it's the opposite of a minimum price, and we use minimum prices for negative externalities, so presumably we should use maximum prices for positive externalities. No. Okay, a maximum price will just create a shortage in the market. Although it will bring the price down, and you could argue by bringing the price down, surely more people want to consume the good. They do. That's where people do want to consume it, but you're offering no incentive to producers. So unless this is a guaranteed minimum price scheme where the government has firmly stated that they will buy the excess demand, okay, or the government will give subsidies for people to purchase this thing, then it's not going to happen. There is no incentive for suppliers to produce this in the market at that price, and therefore all you get left with is an excessive demand, or in the real world we might just call that a shortage. Maximum prices are not a good strategy for fixing this market failure. So don't kind of intuitively, you might have said that, but it's wrong, so unlearn it. Public provision then. Well, what I mean by this is providing the good for free. So here was our original supply curve, and here was our demand curve. But this is the way that I would analyze it, okay? And it may not be strictly brilliant economics here, okay? But the way I understand this private provision is that we're making it free at the point of use. So we're not asking people to pay. We're just providing it, and we're just providing it to consumers for free. So actually, this supply curve, although it is the marginal cost curve and it still stays the same, we don't really need it now because prices are not being determined by the free market anymore. Prices are being determined by the command economy, by the state. And they have stated that the price is zero. Now, if the price is zero, we can come along here. That's how much people would be willing and able to consume at zero. So that's where we are now. We have increased consumption. Brilliant. But the problem with this is that it's well beyond Q-sol. Economics hasn't said we should provide it for free. Economics didn't say by providing it for free, we'll get maximum community surplus. That's the most efficient allocation of resources. economics said we should provide up to Q sol and no more. Beyond Q sol is a welfare loss. So I would argue that economic theory, now whether this is right or wrong, you can make your own judgments. I'm not telling you, I'm just stating that I think as a kind of classically trained economist, you should be looking at that and thinking, well, actually state provision is incorrect. State provision just creates as much of a welfare loss as the previous market failure. Or in this scenario, I mean, actually, look, that under allocation is smaller than this now over allocation. In fairness, this is an example of government failure. We've gone too far. We've created even much more of a welfare loss now, a much bigger waste of resources than we previously had. But it's up to you to decide. I mean, healthcare is one of those very contentious issues, particularly now at the moment. Yeah, you can't, you know, the person who's saying that we should cut the NHS budget at the moment is somebody who's making, you know, political suicide here. So I'm not telling you one way or the other. Okay, this isn't the place for me to lecture you on how much we should spend on the NHS. I'm just giving you two sides of the argument. The economic side of the argument is actually perhaps state provision, zero, you know, providing it for free is potentially a waste of resources. You look at somebody like my granny who goes to the GP just for a chat. That's not a good use of resources of that GP's time. Perhaps if you charged her, and ultimately that's what economics is saying, that we should charge people to use this, but it should be lower than what it was originally, then she would stop using it to that extent. She would stop abusing the system. Now, on the other hand, you have plenty of people saying, but actually we need the NHS to be free because things like income inequality, you can't just say that only people who can afford it can access healthcare. Healthcare is too important for the free market. But there we go. That's an aside. Hopefully, though, what you will be able to see there now is there is public externalities from positive externalities are as much of a market failure as negative externalities. Here are some interventions that the government could employ in order to fix that market failure. But all of them, again, come with their own evaluations, and it's up to you to think about those evaluations as and when you're writing your long answer question. Cool. Look, keep the suggestions coming, please. I might do a bit more on market failure, but I'd love to have some suggestions on other topics that you want me to do going forward. Anyway, stay safe, take care of yourselves, and I hope to see you all soon. Cheerio.